you hear me out the back? Yes? Yeah? Excellent. Well, hello, I'm Allegra Spender, the member for Wentworth, and it's my great joy to kick this off this evening. And I'd like to start by introducing and inviting Jean Ross to deliver an acknowledgement of country. Jean, if you don't know him already, is a proud Berowra saltwater man, 4th generation born on Gadigal land. He has strong connections to the local Indigenous community and is well known to many here through his work with Waverley Council, East Rugby Club, North Bondi Surf Life Saving Club and many community groups. So thank you so much, Jean, for being here tonight.
Nothing else?
Gamilaroi, Nagabi. I just welcomed you to two of the local languages, Berowra and Gamilaroi. Gamilaroi literally translates to G'day, can't be more Australian. Nagabi is the same thing, just welcome. I ask you to join me in acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land on which we're meeting, in this beautiful setting out there with the water. The people of the Darwin language group, the Gadigal, the Berowra and the Bidjigal people, the people who mentally cared for and respected this land as family for thousands of years. We pay our respect and honour the spirits that guide us, those elders whose words and actions shape our decisions, point us on our path, whose knowledge has been given freely so we may look after country and family. We pay our respects and honour the elders present and elders from other communities here today. We request that the emerging elders, there's a few of you here, keep up the traditions by learning, understanding and telling the story of the land we live, learn and walk on, for we're all part of the story of this land. This story, this path we are now on is a simple maths equation. 65,000 plus 250. That's 65,250. It's not 250 minus 65,000. We all gain here. There are no losers, there's no loss. Nothing is being given away. 65,000 years of knowledge, tradition, sustainability and science, plus 250 years of modernisation, technology, wonderful institutions of learning and government, and brilliant people coming from all over the globe to live here. We all win. 65,250 years is a greater history than just 250 years. We just have to add them together. Let's walk with pride, side by side, with a shared history, a proud history. Be proud of us, the amazing sustainability of this culture. It's yours as well. It's your culture. It's your history. It's our culture. It's our history. We are adding, not taking away. Elder and friend Gary says, in the old times before the boats, we were 250 nations with 700 languages. We have always been multicultural. Uncle Noel Pearson reminds us of the great gift of migration, and now in the modern times we've just added 200 nations. But one thing is for certain, we're all part of the story of this land. This part of the journey, this issue, is my life. It's not just a post on social media. This story is about my family, my family's history, my family's future. What we are asking for, in reality, is very little, and I feel we've been made to beg. Empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, my shoes, the shoes of Aboriginal Australia and our children, the future custodians of this place, this country, this land, the land we love. This is not about winning or losing. It's not about politics. It's not a left or a right issue. It's a rights of human issue. It's an issue of doing the right thing. If we look to our future, to our children's future. What do they want? This decision is for them, not us. The time of our time has come and gone. Don't make them wait too long. And for those of us old enough, yes, I just did quote Steely Dan. The youth vote for this question is through the roof. It's for them. It's their time. I put myself in front of this debate knowing I will invite anger from some and have felt that anger from many. But I stand before you, in front of you good people, with a great pride for my people and culture. In our culture, we believe the earth is our mother. We get all we need from her. And if the earth is our mother, that makes all of you my brothers and sisters. We are all family, and we are all part of the story of this land. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean, for those welcoming remarks. And I'd also like to acknowledge the land of the Gadigal, Bidjigal and Berowra people and pay my respects to elders past, present, emerging and those in this room. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Obviously, The Voice has had a lot of media attention in recent weeks. And to be honest, a lot of the debate is unedifying in the kindest possible terms I can find. And what we really want to do tonight was to really cut through the noise today, talk about the elements of the voice of Parliament that is uniting people across politics. It's the reality of this project, of this proposal. It is simple, it is modest, and it's brought together people from all political persuasions. Just yesterday, I was standing in Martin Place, with people from the Greens, from the Labor Party, from the Liberal Party, for Liberals for Yes, other independents. And it's wonderful to have something to agree on. But we're here tonight to talk about the reasons that people on the more conservative end of our politics, such as our panellists, why they have openly supported The Voice, despite the Liberal Party in the federal instance coming out in opposition to it. As Julian put it very eloquently in Parliament not too long ago, empowerment, decision-making, responsibility, accountability, giving back. These are conservative ideals. You know, we may not agree on everything, but this is something much larger and more important than party politics. So I ask you tonight to bring your questions, because the most important part of the debate that we're going to have in the next few weeks is that it is respectful and that we are informed. And that is something that is, simply I think that we all have a responsibility. When we hear from people like Jean about the difference that it could make to people's lives in this country, we have a great responsibility as members of our community to take this vote seriously, get informed and make a good decision. And so I'm very grateful to have some very eminent people here to share their perspective on why they're voting yes, and to give you, everyone in the room, a chance to ask open and respectful questions. So I'm going to start with some questions to the panel, but then it's very much going to be open to the room, because this is your chance to ask the questions. And some of those questions will be difficult, but we need to ask those questions because this is an important decision that we have in front of us. So joining on the panel tonight, I'm very proud to have Julian Leeser MP, the Federal MP for Berowra. From June 22 to April 23, Julian served as the Shadow Attorney General and Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. He resigned from the front bench on a matter of principle and has been an active supporter of the Yes campaign for the 2023 referendum. So wonderful to have you here, Julian. We're also joined... We're also joined by Tony Nutt, former Chief of Staff to John Howard and former Federal Director of the Liberal Party. Tony is also on the board of Australians for Indigenous Constitutional Recognition and a proud supporter of the Yes campaign. Thank you for being here tonight, Tony. And finally, we have Geoffrey Winters, a proud Gamilaroi man. Geoffrey is a lawyer and a former Liberal Party candidate in the seat of Sydney, and is currently the CEO of Just Reinvest, an organisation which provides opportunities for Aboriginal communities and government to co-design justice reinvestment in New South Wales. So thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to take it away as a panel. So I think I'll start with a little history. An Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice is the first request of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which came in 2017 after a long consultation with Indigenous Australians. But Julian, you started work on this before 2017. How did it come about? And, you know, can you tell us a little bit about that sort of origin story?
Well, firstly, never worked with chalk technology or anything. Well, firstly, look, Allegra, can I say thank you so much for convening this evening. I enjoy working with you on the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and I'm pleased to be campaigning with you on this issue as well, because it's an issue that is, in my view, above party and above politics. I'm the sort of person that you will usually find on the no case on a referendum to change the Constitution. I must have been a very strange child. I grew up in this part of Sydney. And for my 10th birthday, I asked my mother and my father not for a bike or a cricket bat or a new game. I said, no, I'd like to have a copy of the Constitution. It's very much Nervus Maximus, as I said in my maiden speech. But it began an interest in the Constitution for me that's never really ended. When the Republic debate was on in 1999 and 1998, I was an elected delegate on the ACN No Republic ticket for the 1998 Constitutional Convention. I was the youngest elected delegate at that convention, and then John Howard put me on the 10-member No Case Committee for the Republic referendum. One of the things I did at that time, because I was living over here, was run the spectacularly unsuccessful Wentworth votes no in that referendum. Wentworth very clearly voted yes in the Republic referendum. I also was involved as the citizens convener of a group to oppose a referendum to recognise local government, and I'd written a book of a collection of essays opposing Australia having a Bill of Rights. So, as I say, I'm usually the person who would find on the no case of a referendum.
And the losing side, that's the business.
Well, they won in 1999, and the local government one was a non-starter. So Noel Pearson, when he was trying to work out how do we get conservative people who think that the Constitution is a remarkable achievement, like I do, how do we get them on board to try and encourage more Australians to back a referendum to recognise Indigenous people? And there've been other proposals that have been on the table, things like a racial non-discrimination clause. Now we might all say, well, racial discrimination is a terrible thing. Of course we should ban that in the Constitution. Sounds like a very good idea, except that what it effectively does is transfer all the decisions about what is discriminatory and what isn't discriminatory away from the Parliament. When you don't like the decisions the Parliament has made, you can turf us as parliamentarians, to the High Court, which really has the final say on the Constitution. And Noel had been going around, he kept hearing this opposition to a racial non-discrimination clause. And he came to see me, and he saw people like Greg Craven and Anne Toomey and Damien Freeman and other constitutional conservatives, and he said, help us understand what makes you guys vote no. Why do you think the Constitution is so important? And I said to him, I think the Constitution's a great democratic achievement of our country. It was written in Australia by Australians for Australian conditions. And it's important to think about the Constitution as a practical charter of government. It's a rule book. It doesn't have the flowery language of the American Constitution. It doesn't have a Bill of Rights. But what it does do is it sets up institutions. So think about creating an institution of some sort that goes with the grain of the Constitution. And Noel went away and he thought and he talked to others, and he came up with a proposal for an advisory body, which is the basis of the voice that the people at Uluru adopted. And Noel worked with Greg, with Damien, with Anne, with myself, with others, to develop the idea of the voice, which was then taken through the dialogue processes as one of the range of options that Indigenous people could choose from when they wanted to think about constitutional recognition. So when people think that this is a radical proposal, it's actually a proposal that was designed by Indigenous people in conjunction with constitutional conservatives in order to address the concerns of conservatives about judicial activism. And in fact, the fact that my friends on the no case have spent almost no time criticising the provision, and most of the time talking about issues that have nothing to do with what we're voting on, indicates to me that this actually is a very safe proposal. Because if it was not, you'd hear a lot more about the provision that we're voting on, And the no case actually doesn't want you to look at the provision at all. And perhaps a bit later we might come back and talk about the provision itself. So that's my history of this. In fact, I thought this was such a good idea. I set up an organisation called Uphold and Recognise back in 2014 to try and encourage constitutional conservatives to support recognition, particular recognition to a voice.
Thank you, Julian. I think since we're talking so much about the Constitution, maybe it is just the moment to go through the 4 points of the referendum. Do you want to do that? I know we've got a number of lawyers here on the panel, but do you want to start, Julian, and then Geoffrey and Tony, if you want to add anything as well?
Can I encourage people, if you haven't got one of these in front of you, to take one on your way out, and if you do, just to have a look at it. I also encourage people, I know there's lots of people here from the Jewish community, I think it makes a wonderful Shabbat dinner placemat. If you want to start a good dinner party otherwise, put it down, make some coffees and get your friends talking about it, because the more people that actually look at the provision, I think, the better. So if you've got this document, the first thing to look at is this yellow text on the inside left-hand page if you look at the document. That's the words you'll actually see on the ballot paper when you go to vote on the 14th of October. There's a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve of the proposed alteration? And if you approve of it, you write yes in English, and if you don't approve it, you write no in English. If you look at this box here on the inside right-hand page, that's the provision itself. Now, as I said, I was involved in the Republic referendum in 1999. That was a massive change to our Constitution. There were over 69 changes to the Constitution. This is one new section. This is one of the smallest changes ever proposed to our Constitution. So when people tell you it's a massive change, they're wrong. Let's go through what it is that we are looking to change. So firstly it says, in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first people of Australia. That's the recognition part. That's what we've been talking about in this country since the great Yorta Yorta man William Cooper petitioned King George for the recognition of his people in the Parliament back in 1938. 1. There shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. That is the guarantee that there will be a permanent body in the Constitution to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. So, number 1, there is a guarantee that some body of some sort will exist. Number 2, this is the only guaranteed power of the body. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice may make representations to the Parliament, that's capital P Parliament, that means the federal Parliament, and the executive government of the Commonwealth, which is a fancy way of saying ministers and public servants, on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So what have we got? We've got recognition, we've got a guarantee of a body, and we've got the one guaranteed power that the body has, which is to make representations to ministers, public servants, and the federal Parliament. 3, and this is the detailed part, and the part that underscores the fact that we as the Parliament remain supreme on these matters. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. So we get to choose how many people serve on it, what they get paid, how much budget this has, the way in which the representations are received, the priorities, the functions, the procedures. That's all we're voting on. So we're recognising Aboriginal people. We're giving a guarantee that there'll be a body. We're saying that the body can make representations, which are effectively just submissions. And we're saying that we, the Parliament, will control everything else that happens to the body, including the way it works, its powers, its functions and its procedures. That's the big, scary voice that you're hearing all about. It's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. We, the Parliament, remain in control. If you don't like what we're doing, turf out your parliamentarians and put somebody in that you do like in terms of what they're doing. Different governments will adapt the voice over time to meet the changing circumstances of Indigenous people. It's a very safe change, and it's been endorsed now, I think my count is by 4 former Justices of the High Court and 2 former Chief Justices of New South Wales. So a very, very safe, simple, straightforward change.
Thank you so much, Julian. I think that I'd love to move to you, Geoffrey, and just ask about, you're campaigning, you're supporting the voice. I'd love to hear from your perspective why you think this is important and the difference that you think it will make to Indigenous people around the country.
First, I'd like to thank Gene for his welcome. It was fantastic. And also to Allegra for putting this on tonight. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Have we got undecided voters here? It's always good to know whether we're talking to people who are preaching or not. If there's any, it'd just be nice to know, because we go around campaigning and so many of the rooms are just people who already have made up their mind, and that's fantastic because I learn everything from listening to Julian, but it's also nice to know other people learning something as well. Why do I think it'll work? Because, so I work for an organisation called Justice Reinvestment, and the whole notion is that we believe the criminal justice system, and I think most people here would agree also, having read the just high-level statistics, fails Aboriginal people. And either Aboriginal people are more prone to criminal behaviour or whatever, but I don't think that's the case, or there's a systemic issue. And in the communities we work in, we listen to those communities who are most affected and ask them what is the possible answer, and then try to develop those solutions. And in the communities we work in, Burke, being the longest serving JR site, has seen an 82% reduce in domestic violence in 4 years. And for me, just, you know, numbers have a bit of a power. Not sure they do for everyone.
I think we need to be in.
The numbers are the point for me. And in the communities where we listen to people about the issues that affect them, we see better outcomes. So for me, I think about what's worked in Burke, where we are active, what's worked in Moree, and how can that be modelled nationally. What I do find interesting for those who are sitting sort of, you know, yes, no, not sure, whatever, the opposition leader is very supportive of a regional voice and is very supportive of local voices. I'm sure whatever the outcome is, we will end up eventually having those style structures. That is what our organisation already works in. And in those communities where you do listen to local people, the results are already fundamentally better. I think the other thing which we're not really talking about, which is this. If you ever ask the Australian population to form an 80 to 90% support for any change in the country, that would be astronomical. There is no polling that doesn't show that approximately 80% of Aboriginal people support this reform. If we asked a federal government to be formed based on an 80% basis, we would never form government. I mean, Allegra probably would have elected, nobody else would have elected. This is fundamentally massively supported by Aboriginal people. And it's a very modest, very, very, very gentle suggestion to do, and you've pointed out, something that has been done for years, which is just consult people on what's going to affect them. There's this GIF or meme or whatever they're called, I don't know, going around at the moment, which says, apparently there's a question for the Australian population that a non-binding advisory body should get set up for Aboriginal people. Couldn't we surely sort this out by an email? And there's something in that, you know, it's a bit of a ridiculous question. I'm glad we're having these nights and these are important, but it's also like, let's all go out and have a big vote about something that is very, very marginal in terms of how it will affect your life. I suggest I could probably spot 3 or 4 Aboriginal people here, myself included. Marginal affects your life, fundamental effect, spiritually, inclusively, to other people, and we don't know what the actual impact will be when it becomes functional, and as Julian rightly pointed out, when each iteration of Parliament refines the model. And that's the thing people have got to remember. There is every power to the government not to fund it beyond $1.50 and 3 meetings a year. But of course, politically, because the country actually has a good heart and a great soul, will want to do more and want to see this body affect change. So this is about making a decision that will have marginal, if nil, impact on your life, apart from perhaps that awful feeling we'll all have collectively on the 15th, if we wake up and it's a no, which I'm sure most of us, and I'm the same, who live in the eastern suburbs, will get over it pretty quickly. But there's a lot of people for whom this will be a hugely negative consequence if it's a no. But actually, as time goes on, I think the body could become quite important. The other thing I would say is, the reason we have a Senate is because certain states thought that New South Wales and other places would get in the way. Section 128 was inserted, the way we have referenda, because they were worried New South Wales and Victoria would control everything. Well, the Senate is, of course, the most inconvenient process, Allegra, I'm trying to string you on this, most inconvenient thing we have, but it's a great institution. We've come to adapt to be a very useful institution. This thing is nowhere near that. It is an advisory body that does the right thing and will have very limited impact on most people's lives. I think it's a very, very, what's the word we always use, modest request? Marcia's language. It's a modest request.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. I will ask a follow-up question. We hear that the overwhelming majority of Indigenous Australians support the voice, but we also see, from the Indigenous Australians not supporting the voice. What's going on there?
Warren Mundine, I'll tell a joke and then I'll get to substance.
You have to speak. I think you have to speak like this.
I'll tell a joke and then I'll get to some substance. Warren Mundine walked into the Sydney Contemporary opening 2 Wednesdays ago. And can you hear it now? Can you hear it now?
Keep the microphone near your mouth.
Warren Mundine walked into an art gallery last week and he had this massive no badge on. And it was in Darlinghurst. And everyone was aghast. Like you could audibly hear the crowd just very upset. So I just walked over to Warren and I took the badge off and I said, "It's for the best." And then walked around and introduced people. And what was good about this was that then conversations started to flow. And this is why I think these meetings are important. People have different opinions. And it is actually not wrong to vote no. I was at IAG earlier today and they're doing a big workplace conversation about this. I said, your bigger issue isn't what material you give to your staff before the vote. It's what you do with your staff the day after the vote. Because there will be people who work for you. You've got 5,500 employees in Sydney. People who are going to vote no. Do they feel included? Because there's no point running a campaign about inclusion and a better future if then the day after you exclude every person who voted no. So for me, there's a very, very significant social conversation going on right now. And Australians are very bad at this. We like to go to the cricket and cheer and then walk away. We like to go to the rugby and cheer and walk away. Fiji, by the way, that was a disaster. There's definitely secret operations for that. But we're about to have a very, very significant conversation. And it'll happen in a really small cardboard box. A cardboard box that we invented, the idea of the Australian ballot. The idea that you're in a small space alone and no one's looking over your shoulder and you cast your vote. We've had 44 referenda, 8 have succeeded, 4 occurred concurrently with an election. Very few occur isolated. I think it's better to have them with elections because it's good to get people distracted. This is one of those very, very pointed moments where the whole country is going to come together and sit in a room by themselves in a box. Don't think about the people around you when you go into that box. Don't think about what we're saying beyond what you think is important. There is actually a core to Australia that I think is good. And we've always kind of got to the right thing, haven't we? We've always done the right thing by migrants. We've always done the right thing by, for God's sake, the Aboriginal community's done the right thing by white settlers, for goodness sake. I think this is the opportunity to do the right thing by the people who are here first. They're asking for a really tiny thing that probably will never ever pop up on your radar again unless you watch the SBS News. So I just think go into that private box and do the right thing.
Thank you.